The space station called Helios 7 was busy that day. Thousands of different alien species walked through the wide halls, buying and selling goods from across the galaxy. The air was filled with strange sounds as universal translators worked to turn alien languages into words everyone could understand. Jack Morrison pushed through the crowd with his supply list in hand. He was a cargo hauler, which meant he flew his small ship from place to place, moving boxes and supplies for anyone who would pay. His ship was named the Wanderer, and it was old but reliable. Jack had docked at Helios 7 that morning to buy fuel and food before his next job. As Jack walked past the main marketplace, he heard shouting near the lower docks. A large group of aliens had gathered around something, and they all looked worried. Jack was curious, so he walked over to see what was happening. When he pushed to the front of the crowd, Jack saw a damaged cargo container sitting on the floor. The metal sides had been torn open, and inside the container were 3 small creatures. They had dark blue fur with silver lines running through it. Their eyes glowed a bright amber color, and even though they were young, Jack could see their sharp claws and teeth. The 3 creatures were huddled together in the corner of the container. They looked scared. The smallest one was shaking. A woman standing next to Jack spoke quietly. Her name was Lisa Hughes, and she was a human scientist who studied alien animals. Jack had met her a few times before when he delivered supplies to her research station. "Those are Vexarian cubs," Lisa said. Her voice was sad. "Someone left them here. Probably smugglers who got scared and ran away." Jack had heard of Vexarians before. Everyone in the galaxy had heard of them. They were dangerous predators that could grow to be 8 feet tall. Stories said that adult Vexarians could tear through steel doors with their claws and bite through armor with their jaws. Entire colonies had been destroyed when Vexarians attacked. The station commander walked up to the container. His name was Krelix, and he was a tall, insect-like alien with long antennae. He made clicking sounds with his mouth parts as he looked at the cubs. "We cannot keep them here," Krelix said firmly. "Vexarians are apex predators. When they grow up, they can break through reinforced steel. These cubs must be killed before they become dangerous." Jack felt sick to his stomach. "Killed? But they are just babies." Krelix turned to look at Jack. His antennae twitched in a way that Jack knew meant surprise. "Dangerous babies. No one in the galaxy will take them. Adult Vexarians have destroyed entire colonies when they got angry. Even other Vexarians will not take care of abandoned cubs. That is their way." The 3 cubs made soft crying sounds. They pressed closer together, trying to comfort each other. The smallest one, who was only about as big as a house cat, looked straight at Jack. Its amber eyes were full of fear and intelligence. Jack could see that the cub understood what was happening. Lisa put her hand on Jack's arm. "Do not even think about it, Jack. I have studied Vexarians for 3 years. They cannot be tamed. Every single person who tried to raise one ended up dead. It always ends badly." But Jack could not look away from those frightened eyes. He had grown up on one of Earth's frontier colonies, far from the big cities. His family had worked with wild animals, helping injured creatures and raising orphaned babies. His mother had always told him that fear turned misunderstood animals into monsters in people's minds. Jack remembered a time when he was 10 years old. A wounded predator had wandered near his family's farm. All the neighbors wanted to kill it, saying it was too dangerous. But Jack's mother had treated its injuries and fed it until it was strong. Then she let it go. The animal never hurt anyone. "I will take them," Jack said loudly. The crowd went silent. Then everyone started talking at once. Some aliens backed away from Jack like he was crazy. Others laughed, thinking he was making a joke. Krelix's antennae twitched again. "You will sign papers that say this is your choice. When the cubs grow up and attack you, the Galactic Council will not help. You will be alone." "That is fine," Jack said. "Give me the papers." Lisa grabbed his shoulder hard. "Jack, this is crazy. You will be dead within a year. Maybe sooner." Jack knelt down next to the container. He moved slowly and kept his hands where the cubs could see them. He had learned from his mother that scared animals needed to see that you were not a threat. The largest cub watched Jack carefully. After a moment, it crawled forward a little bit. It sniffed Jack's hand with its small black nose. Then it licked his fingers with a tongue that felt like rough sandpaper. Jack smiled. "Maybe I will die," he said to Lisa, "but I cannot leave them here to be killed. They deserve a chance." It took 2 hours to finish all the paperwork. Jack had to sign many documents that said he understood the danger. He had to promise that if the cubs hurt anyone, he would be responsible. The station's lawyer made him read every page carefully. Finally, Krelix gave Jack permission to take the cubs to his ship. Station security watched carefully as Jack carried the container through the halls. People moved out of his way quickly. Some whispered that he was insane. Others said he would not live to see the next month. When Jack reached the Wanderer, he opened the container in his cargo bay. The 3 cubs slowly climbed out. They looked around at their new home with wide eyes. Jack sat down on the floor and waited. He did not try to touch them or pick them up. He just sat quietly and let them explore. The largest cub was clearly the leader. It walked around the cargo bay, sniffing everything. The middle cub was bigger and stronger looking. It tested the walls with its claws, scratching lightly at the metal. The smallest cub stayed close to the other 2, looking nervous. After about an hour, the cubs came back to where Jack was sitting. The leader climbed into his lap. The other 2 cubs pressed against his sides. They were tired and scared, and they wanted comfort. Jack gently stroked their soft fur. "You need names," he said quietly. "I will call you Scout," he told the leader. "And you are Ranger," he said to the strong middle cub. "And you are Pip," he told the smallest one. The cubs made soft purring sounds. They seemed to like their new names. That night, Jack set up a sleeping area for the cubs in the cargo bay. He gave them blankets and put out water. But when he tried to go to his own bed, all 3 cubs followed him. They did not want to be alone. Jack ended up sleeping on the cargo bay floor with 3 Vexarian cubs curled up against him. Their purring was loud, and Ranger kicked in his sleep, but Jack did not mind. Before he fell asleep, Jack thought about what he had done. Everyone said he was going to die. Maybe they were right. Vexarians were the most feared predators in the galaxy. But as Jack felt the cubs sleeping peacefully against him, he thought maybe everyone was wrong about them. These were not monsters. They were just scared children who had been abandoned and left to die. Jack had saved them, but he knew the hard part was just beginning. He had to figure out how to raise 3 of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. As the Wanderer's engines hummed quietly, Jack finally closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would start learning how to care for his new family. Tomorrow the real challenge would begin. The first week with the cubs was harder than Jack had imagined. Scout, Ranger, and Pip were full of energy. They ran through every room of the Wanderer, climbing on things that should not be climbed on. They knocked over boxes and tore up Jack's spare clothes with their sharp claws. But the biggest problem was food. Jack tried giving them regular meat from his storage, but the cubs just sniffed it and walked away. He tried different types of protein paste. They refused that too. After 3 days, Jack started to panic. The cubs were getting thinner. Jack called Lisa on the communication system. Her face appeared on the screen and she looked worried when she saw him. "They will not eat," Jack said. "I have tried everything, but they just turn away from the food." Lisa thought for a moment. Vexarians are carnivores, but it is not just about the meat itself. They need to hunt. Their minds are built for chasing and catching prey. If you just give them food, their instincts tell them something is wrong. Jack looked at the 3 cubs sleeping in the corner. They looked so small and helpless. "How do I let them hunt on a spaceship?" "You have to make them think they are hunting," Lisa explained. "Use your brain, Jack. You are good at solving problems." After the call ended, Jack went to his storage room. He found some old repair drones that he used to fix the outside of his ship. The drones could fly around on their own using simple programming. Jack spent the next few hours working. He programmed the drones to fly in random patterns around the cargo bay. He attached small pouches of protein paste to each drone. When a cub caught a drone, the pouch would open and release the food. When Jack released the first drone, the cub's heads snapped up immediately. Their eyes locked onto the moving target. Scout crouched low, her body tense. Ranger and Pip spread out to the sides, then Scout jumped. She moved so fast that Jack barely saw her leap. Her claws caught the drone and brought it down. The protein paste spilled out and Scout ate it eagerly. Ranger and Pip immediately pounced on the next drone Jack released. Finally, the cubs were eating. Jack felt relief wash over him. The cubs did not just eat, they looked happy. Their tails swished back and forth as they chased the drones. Over the next few weeks, Jack learned more about each cub's personality. Scout was the smartest. She learned the drone patterns quickly and started predicting where they would go. Sometimes she would wait in the perfect spot and catch a drone the moment Jack released it. Ranger was strong. Even though he was not as fast as Scout, he could leap higher and hit harder. Once, Ranger jumped so hard that he dented the wall of the cargo bay. Pip was the smallest, but he was incredibly quick. His reflexes were better than the other two. He could change direction in mid-air and catch drones that seemed impossible to reach. Jack started teaching the cubs simple commands. He used hand signals and simple words. Scout learned the fastest, but all three cubs were smart. Within a month, they understood basic instructions like stay, come, and quiet. But the most important moment came during a solar storm. Jack was flying through a dangerous part of space when his ship's sensors warned him about incoming radiation. He had to pass through it. There was no other route to his destination. The radiation hit the ship hard. The lights flickered and went out. Emergency power kicked in, but the artificial gravity system failed. Suddenly, everything in the ship started floating. Jack grabbed onto his pilot chair, but the cubs were not ready. They started floating through the air, crying out in fear and confusion. Their legs kicked uselessly as they tried to find something solid. Jack pushed off from his chair and floated toward the cubs. He expected them to panic and scratch him in their fear. Wild animals often attacked when they were scared, but the cubs did not attack. Instead, they swam through the air toward Jack. When they reached him, they carefully wrapped their paws around him. Their claws stayed pulled in so they would not hurt him. All three cubs pressed against Jack's body, shaking with fear but trusting him to keep them safe. Jack wrapped his arms around them and held them close. "It is okay," he said softly. "I have got you. We are safe." The storm lasted for 6 hours. The whole time, Jack floated in the cargo bay with 3 Vexarian cubs clinging to him. He talked to them quietly, keeping his voice calm and steady. Slowly, the cubs stopped shaking. They still held on to Jack, but they were not as afraid. When the storm finally passed, gravity returned. They all fell to the floor in a heap. The cubs immediately checked on Jack, sniffing him and making worried sounds until they were sure he was not hurt. That night, something had changed. The cubs did not just see Jack as the person who fed them. They saw him as family. They had bonded with him in a way that went deeper than training or food. Word about Jack and his cubs spread through the trading routes. At every station where the Wanderer stopped, people gathered to see the human who was raising Vexarians. Most kept their distance. They still thought Jack was crazy and would soon be dead. One day, Jack docked at a station called Port Genesis to refuel. He was buying supplies when an old woman approached him. Her face was wrinkled and her hair was gray, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. "You are Jack Morrison," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," Jack replied. "Do I know you?" "My name is Betty Grant. I am a pilot. I have been flying through space for 40 years. She paused and looked sad. "My husband and I tried to raise a Vexarian cub 20 years ago." Jack felt his heart sink. He knew what was coming. "The cub killed him when it grew older," Betty said quietly. "It happened during feeding time. One moment everything was fine, and the next moment my husband was dead." "The cub tore him apart." "I am sorry," Jack said. "He meant it," Betty nodded. "We made mistakes. We did not understand Vexarians. We treated the cub like a dog from Earth. We tried to be the boss, to dominate it. But Vexarians do not think like Earth animals. They do not follow leaders the way dogs do." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data chip. "This has all my research on it. Everything we learned before things went wrong. Vexarians understand partnership. They understand working together. They understand respect. But the moment you treat them like they are below you, they see you as prey." Jack took the data chip carefully. "Thank you. This means a lot. I hope you succeed," Betty said. "I really do. Maybe you can do what we could not." That night, Jack stayed up late reading Betty's research. It was full of useful information. He learned that Vexarians needed to feel useful. They needed jobs to do. Sitting around with nothing to do made them anxious and aggressive. The next day, Jack started giving the cubs responsibilities. Scout learned to watch the air quality monitors and alert Jack when the filters needed changing. Ranger helped secure cargo boxes when they shifted during flight. Pip used his excellent hearing to listen for mechanical problems in the engine. The cubs loved having jobs. They took their work seriously. Scout would sit by the monitors for hours, waiting patiently. Ranger checked every cargo strap twice. Pip would tilt his head and listen to the engines, making concerned sounds if something did not sound right. Jack realized that he was not raising pets. He was raising crew members. The cubs were part of his team now. They had their own work to do, and they took pride in doing it well. As the weeks turned into months, the cubs grew bigger and stronger. But they never showed any sign of aggression toward Jack. They protected him, they worked with him, and they trusted him completely. Jack started to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could prove everyone wrong about Vexarians. 6 months had passed since Jack took the cubs from Helios 7. The Wanderer was approaching a small mining station called Clearwater when Jack received an emergency message. The station was in trouble. Pirates had blockaded Clearwater Station. They were not letting any supply ships through. The people on the station were running out of food and medicine. They were desperate and willing to pay well for anyone brave enough to help them. Jack was not a fighter, but the money was good. More importantly, there were families on that station who needed help. He decided to try. As the Wanderer got closer to Clearwater, Lisa called him on the communication system. She looked worried. "Jack, turn around," Lisa said urgently. "There is a Corvan battle cruiser in that area. The Corvans have offered rewards for anyone who brings them information about ships carrying Vexarians." Jack knew about the Corvans. They were a species of large reptile-like aliens who were excellent warriors. 50 years ago, a group of wild Vexarians had attacked one of their colony worlds and killed thousands of Corvans. Since then, the Corvans hated all Vexarians. They wanted every single one of them dead. "I cannot turn back," Jack said. "People need these supplies. Children need the medicine I am carrying." Lisa started to argue, but Jack ended the call. He knew the risk, but he had made his choice. Jack used an old trick his father had taught him. He flew through a field of asteroids, using the big rocks to hide his ship from the pirate sensors. It was dangerous flying, but Jack had done it before. He made it through and docked at Clearwater Station's emergency bay. The station administrator was waiting at the dock. His name was Carl Stevens, and he looked exhausted. Dark circles hung under his eyes, and his clothes were wrinkled. "Thank goodness you came," Carl said as Jack opened his cargo bay. "We have 60 families here. The children were getting sick without their medicine. You saved lives today, Morrison." Jack started moving the supply boxes with help from the station workers. Scout, Ranger, and Pip stayed in the ship like Jack had taught them. They knew to be quiet when there were strangers around. But then the alarms started blaring. Red lights flashed throughout the station. A voice came over the speakers, speaking in the harsh Corvan language before switching to standard language. "This is Commander Vex of the Corvan Defense Force. We know you are harboring dangerous animals. Surrender the human and the Vexarian creatures immediately, or we will take them by force." Carl's face went pale. "Someone must have reported you. The Corvans followed your trail through the asteroid field." Jack ran back to his ship. The cubs were standing at attention, their ears pointed forward. They knew something was wrong. Through the ship's cameras, Jack could see Corvan soldiers cutting through the station's outer doors with plasma torches. A woman named Helen Price appeared. She was the head of station security. She carried a weapon, but Jack could see her hands shaking. "We will try to hold them off," Helen said. "But we are miners, not soldiers. The Corvans are trained warriors," Jack thought quickly. He could try to run, but the Corvan ship would catch him. He could surrender, but the Corvans would kill his cubs. There was no good choice. The blast doors to the docking bay shook as the Corvans hammered on them. Scout, Ranger, and Pip moved to stand between Jack and the door. Their bodies dropped low to the ground. The playful cubs Jack had raised were gone. In their place stood 3 focused predators. "No," Jack said firmly. "You 3 need to get back in the ship. This is not your fight." Scout turned and looked at Jack. She made a sound he had never heard before. It was deep and resonant, almost like she was speaking. Ranger and Pip answered with similar sounds. Helen stepped closer, her eyes wide with wonder. "They are asking for permission to defend their pack. I read about this behavior in old texts. Vexarians do not just fight to survive. They fight to protect their family." Jack looked at the 3 cubs he had raised. They were not cubs anymore. In 6 months they had grown. Scout was now as big as a large dog. Ranger was even bigger. Only Pip was still relatively small. The doors exploded inward with a blast of smoke and sparks. 6 Corvan soldiers rushed through, their weapons raised. They were massive, each one over 7 feet tall with thick scales and powerful muscles. What happened next was so fast that Jack almost could not follow it. Scout jumped straight up, higher than seemed possible. She landed on the first soldier's shoulders and used her claws to cut the strap holding his weapon. The gun fell to the ground. Ranger went low, sweeping his body under the legs of 2 soldiers. They fell hard. Before they could get up, Ranger had their weapons in his jaws, bending the barrels so they could not fire. Pip was the fastest. He darted between the soldiers like a shadow, too quick for them to target. He cut straps, pulled weapons away, and tripped the Corvins whenever they tried to advance. But what amazed Jack most was that the cubs did not kill anyone. They could have. Their claws were sharp enough to cut through the Corvins' armor. Their jaws were strong enough to bite through bone. But they only disarmed and disabled. The three Vexarians worked together like they had trained for years. Scout would drive a soldier toward Ranger, who would knock them down. Pip would dart in and take their weapon. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Within 2 minutes, all 6 Corvin soldiers were on the ground, disarmed and surrounded. Not one of them was seriously hurt, but they were completely defeated. The Corvin commander watched from the hallway. His eyes were wide with shock. He spoke into his communicator in his own language, then switched to standard speech. "Fall back," he ordered his soldiers. "Return to the ship." As the Corvins retreated, their commander looked directly at Jack. "The human who teaches death itself to show mercy is more dangerous than any beast. You have made a powerful statement today, Jack Morrison." Then they were gone. The Corvin ship detached from the station and flew away. Jack's legs felt weak. He sat down hard on the floor. Immediately, Scout, Ranger, and Pip surrounded him. They sniffed him carefully, checking for injuries. When they were sure he was okay, they pressed against him, seeking comfort after the fight. Carl and Helen stared at the scene with open mouths. Carl was the first to speak. "I have never seen anything like that in my entire life," he said quietly. Helen knelt down near Jack and the cubs. Scout watched her carefully but did not seem threatening. "You did not just train them," Helen said with wonder in her voice. "You built a family. They were not fighting because you commanded them. They fought because they love you." Jack stroked Scout's head gently. "I never wanted them to fight. I just wanted to give them a chance to live." "You did more than that," Carl said. "You showed the galaxy something they thought was impossible." Word of what happened at Clearwater Station spread quickly. Within days, news reports were showing footage from the station's security cameras. People across the galaxy watched 3 Vexarians defend their human companion without killing their attackers. Some people said Jack was a hero. Others said he was still dangerous and foolish. But everyone agreed on one thing. What Jack had done was extraordinary. As Jack flew away from Clearwater Station, he knew his life was about to change. The Galactic Council would want to talk to him. There would be debates and arguments about what should be done with him and his cubs. But for now, Jack just focused on flying his ship. Scout sat in the co-pilot chair watching the stars. Ranger and Pip were in the back, playing with their training drones. They were still just his crew, his family. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The message came 3 days after the incident at Clearwater Station. It was from the Galactic Council, and it was not a request. Jack Morrison was ordered to appear before the Council at their headquarters on Unity Prime. Jack knew this was coming. The security footage from Clearwater had been broadcast across every news network in the galaxy. Half the species were calling him a hero. The other half wanted him arrested. When the Wanderer docked at Unity Prime, Lisa was waiting for him. She looked tired and stressed. "The Council wants to put the cubs in containment," Lisa said as they walked through the massive station. "Some members are pushing for them to be killed. They say you have created a dangerous situation." Jack felt anger rise in his chest. "A dangerous situation? I saved those cubs from being murdered. I raised them with care and respect. They have not hurt anyone." "I know," Lisa said softly, "but you are challenging beliefs that have existed for 200 years. The Council classified Vexarians as impossible to live with. You are proving them wrong, and that scares people in power." The Council chamber was enormous. It was shaped like a bowl, with seats rising up in circles. Representatives from hundreds of different species sat in those seats, all watching as Jack walked to the center of the floor. Scout, Ranger, and Pip walked beside him. The cubs wore special collars that monitored their heart rates and body temperature. If they showed any signs of aggression, the collars would activate sleep drugs. Jack hated seeing those collars on his family, but he had no choice. The chief counselor was a being made of gas that floated in a special container. Its name was Zephyros, and its voice came through speakers built into the container. "We are here to decide if Jack Morrison's actions represent foolish risk or genuine progress," Zephyros announced. The Vexarian species has been classified as incompatible with civilized society for 2 centuries. 3 colonies were destroyed by Vexarian attacks. 47 people have died trying to domesticate them. The evidence is clear. A Corvin representative stood up. His name was General Krax, and his scales were dark green with scars from old battles. Humans are new to the galactic community. They do not understand the dangers we have lived with for generations. This human sees a dangerous predator and thinks he can control it with kindness. When these creatures grow to full size and their instincts take over, people will die. We demand these animals be destroyed before that happens. Many representatives nodded in agreement. Jack could feel the mood in the room turning against him. Then Zephyros spoke again. "Jack Morrison, you may present your defense." Jack walked forward. The cubs moved with him, staying perfectly synchronized with his steps. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "I am not going to stand here and tell you that I have tamed these cubs. That would be a lie. I did not tame them. I learned from them. I adapted to their needs instead of forcing them to adapt to mine." Jack activated a holographic display. It showed data from the past 6 months, feeding schedules, training sessions, behavioral observations, and medical records. "Vexarians are not mindless killers," Jack continued. "They are intelligent social creatures with complex emotions and needs. Every person who died trying to raise them made the same mistake. They treated Vexarians like earth animals. They tried to dominate them, to be the master. But Vexarians do not understand that kind of relationship." He showed more data, including research from Betty Grant. "Vexarians understand partnership. They understand mutual respect. They need to contribute to their community. When you treat them as equals who have value, they respond with loyalty and cooperation." General Krax spoke up again. "Words and data mean nothing. These creatures attacked my soldiers. That proves they are dangerous." "They defended me," Jack corrected, "and they did it without killing anyone. Your soldiers came with weapons to take my family by force. Scout, Ranger, and Pip could have killed every one of them. They have the claws and teeth to do it. But they chose not to. They disarmed your soldiers and stopped the threat without taking lives. That shows incredible restraint and intelligence." Lisa stepped forward. As a scientist, her words carried weight. "I have studied Vexarians for years. I thought they were impossible to work with. But Jack proved me wrong. He succeeded because he did not try to change what Vexarians are. He accepted them and built a relationship based on trust." She displayed her own research on the holographic screen. "My analysis shows that these 3 Vexarians display emotional bonds, cooperative behavior, and problem-solving skills that match or exceed many species we consider civilized. The only difference is that we never gave Vexarians a fair chance." The chamber erupted in debate. Representatives argued loudly in dozens of different languages. Some were angry, some were curious, and some were convinced. The argument went on for hours. Finally, Zephyros called for silence. "We will take a recess to consider the evidence. Jack Morrison, you will wait in the antechamber." In the waiting room, Jack sat with his cubs. They pressed against him, sensing his stress. Scout put her head on his lap. Ranger leaned against his side. Pip curled up by his feet. Betty Grant came to visit. She had traveled to Unity Prime to watch the hearing. "Whatever they decide, you have already changed things," she told Jack. "People all over the galaxy are questioning what they thought they knew." "That matters, but will it be enough to save them?" Jack asked, looking at his cubs. Betty did not answer. She did not know. After 3 more hours, the council called them back. Jack's heart pounded as he walked back into the chamber. The cubs stayed close to him, their ears alert. Zephyros spoke in a formal tone. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision. We have reviewed the evidence and heard the arguments from all sides. This decision was not easy, and not everyone agrees." Jack held his breath. "The Council will permit Jack Morrison to continue his guardianship of the 3 Vexarians. However, there will be conditions. A specialist in cross-species psychology named Gregory Walsh will conduct monthly evaluations. He will assess the behavior and mental state of both the human and the Vexarians. If at any time these evaluations show signs of danger to the public, the Council will intervene immediately." Jack felt relief flood through him. It was not perfect, but it was a chance. "I accept the conditions," he said quickly. Furthermore, Zephyros continued, "this case will be studied. If Jack Morrison continues to succeed, the Council may reconsider its classification of the Vexarian species. But if anything goes wrong, if anyone is hurt, the consequences will be severe. General Crack stood and left the chamber without a word. He clearly disagreed with the decision, but many other representatives looked thoughtful or even hopeful. As Jack left Unity Prime with his cubs, he felt the weight of what had just happened. The council had given him a chance, but they had also put enormous pressure on him. One mistake, one moment of aggression from the cubs, and everything would be over. That night on the Wanderer, Jack sat in his quarters with Scout, Ranger, and Pip. They were calm and peaceful, completely unaware of how close they had come to being killed. Scout nuzzled Jack's hand. In that moment, Jack understood something important. The real judgment had never been the council's to make. Every single day, the cubs chose to trust him. Every day, they chose cooperation over violence. Every day, they proved that understanding was stronger than fear. Jack had saved 3 abandoned cubs from death. But in return, they had taught him something valuable. They had shown him that even the most feared creatures in the galaxy could change when given respect and compassion. The journey was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. But Jack was ready for whatever came next. He had his family, and together they would face the future. As the Wanderer's engines hummed and carried them away from Unity Prime, Jack looked at the 3 Vexarians sleeping peacefully around him. He had given them a chance at life. Now he would give them a chance to change the galaxy's mind. And deep down, Jack believed they would succeed. 2 years had passed since the council hearing. Jack's life had changed in ways he never imagined. The Wanderer still flew through space, but it no longer carried random cargo. Now Jack and his Vexarians had a different mission. They rescued misunderstood creatures across the galaxy. They responded to distress calls from stranded ships. They helped solve conflicts between different species. Jack and his crew had become famous, but more importantly, they had become trusted. Scout had grown into a magnificent animal. She now stood 7 feet tall at her shoulder. Her blue and silver fur was thick and beautiful. She was smart and thoughtful, often solving problems before Jack even noticed them. Ranger was slightly smaller than Scout, but incredibly strong. He could move heavy equipment that would normally require machines. His loyalty was absolute, and he took his responsibilities seriously. Pip had grown too, though he was still the smallest of the 3. But what he lacked in size, he made up for in speed and cleverness. He had become the team's scout and diplomat, able to communicate with other species in ways that surprised everyone. Together, they had accomplished amazing things. They saved 3 ships whose crews were stranded in space. They helped evacuate a failing station before it exploded. They even mediated a territorial argument between 2 alien species who both respected the Vexarians' neutral position. But Jack's greatest achievement was taking shape on a small moon called Haven's Rest. Using the money he had earned and donations from supporters across the galaxy, Jack had built something special. It was a sanctuary for abandoned and misunderstood alien creatures. Lisa had left her old job to join Jack. She was now the head researcher at Haven's Rest, studying the creatures and learning how to help them integrate into galactic society. The sanctuary was home to many different species. 3 more Vexarian cubs lived there, rescued from illegal smuggling operations. There were 2 crystalline beings whose singing could shatter glass, but who were gentle and peaceful when treated with respect. A young phase shifter lived there too, orphaned when fearful colonists killed its parents. Dozens of other creatures called Haven's Rest home. Betty Grant visited often. She brought supplies and told stories of her adventures. She had become an advisor to the sanctuary, helping Jack avoid the mistakes she and her husband had made. Helen Price from Clearwater Station had also moved to Haven's Rest. She was the head of security now, though her job was mostly keeping curious visitors at a safe distance. The creatures at the sanctuary did not need protection from each other. They needed protection from people who did not understand them. One evening, Jack stood on the observation deck watching the sunset. 2 suns, actually, since Haven's Rest orbited a binary star system. The sky turned beautiful shades of orange and purple. Below him, Scout was teaching the younger Vexarians how to hunt properly. She was patient and careful, showing them how to stalk prey without actually hurting it. The young ones watched her with admiration and tried to copy her movements. Gregory Walsh stood beside Jack. He was the psychologist the council had assigned to monitor Jack and the cubs. In the beginning, Gregory had been skeptical. Now he was one of Haven's Rest's strongest supporters. You know, Gregory said thoughtfully. When they first gave me this assignment, I thought I would be writing a report about your death. I expected to document a tragic but predictable attack. Jack smiled slightly. And what are you writing about instead? I am recommending that the Council create 100 facilities like this across frontier space, Gregory replied. You proved that the problem was never the species we labeled dangerous. The problem was our unwillingness to understand them. Lisa walked up to join them. She carried her data pad, which was filled with research notes. I am publishing my findings next month. The xenobiology community will have to rewrite decades of incorrect assumptions about Vixarians and many other species. As they talked, a young human girl ran past them. Her name was Sophie West, and her parents worked at the sanctuary. She was laughing as Pip chased her, gently carrying one of her toys in his mouth. Pip was being careful not to damage the toy or scare the child. The sight should have been terrifying. Pip was large enough to hurt Sophie badly if he wanted to. His jaws could snap her bones easily, but instead he was playing with her like a gentle giant, making sure she was safe and happy. That right there, Gregory said, pointing at Sophie and Pip, is worth more than any research paper. That is proof that coexistence is possible. Jack felt Scout's presence before he saw her. She had finished training the younger cubs and came to check on him. Scout pressed her massive head against Jack's shoulder, a gesture she had done since she was small. It was her way of saying she cared about him. Ranger and Pip joined them on the observation deck. The family was together again, watching the double sunset paint the sky with colors. We are just getting started, Jack said quietly. Imagine what the galaxy could become if more people chose understanding over fear. In the distance, one of the crystalline beings began to sing. Its voice created a haunting melody that echoed across the sanctuary. The sound was beautiful and sad at the same time. Speaking of hope and second chances, Jack thought about the journey that had brought him here. He remembered the day he found 3 scared cubs in a container, minutes away from being killed. He remembered the fear in their eyes and the way people told him he was crazy for trying to save them. Now those cubs were adults. They were respected members of society. They helped save lives and taught other species that Vixarians were not the monsters everyone believed them to be. Lisa interrupted his thoughts. The Council contacted me today. They want to use Haven's Rest as a model for future sanctuaries. They are forming committees to discuss new protocols for integrating species that were previously classified as dangerous. Jack felt pride and satisfaction. This was what he had hoped for. Not just saving 3 cubs, but changing how the entire galaxy thought about misunderstood creatures. How many species are currently classified as incompatible? Gregory asked Lisa. 47, Lisa answered. 47 species that the galaxy has given up on. But if we can help them the way Jack helped the Vixarians, imagine how much richer our society could become. The stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Jack looked up at them and thought about all the worlds out there. How many of them had creatures like his cubs, waiting for someone to give them a chance? How many abandoned young were out there right now, scared and alone? Scout made a soft sound, almost like she was reading Jack's thoughts. She understood that their work was far from finished. Betty Grant joined them on the observation deck. She looked out at the sanctuary she had helped build. Your mother would be proud of you, she told Jack. You remembered what she taught you about seeing past fear to the truth underneath. Jack nodded. His mother had always believed that misunderstood creatures were not monsters. They were just different, and different scared people. She had taught him to look deeper, to see the individual rather than the stereotype. That lesson had saved 3 lives. Now it was changing an entire galaxy. As the night grew darker, the sanctuary's lights came on. Warm yellow light spilled from the buildings where the rescued creatures lived. Jack could hear sounds of different species communicating, playing, and living peacefully together. This was what was possible when people chose compassion over fear. This was what happened when someone was willing to look past appearances and see the truth. Jack had started with a simple choice on a space station 2 years ago. He chose to save 3 abandoned cubs when everyone else wanted them dead. That choice had grown into something bigger than he ever imagined. Scout, Ranger, and Pip had proven that the most feared predators in the galaxy could be gentle, loyal, and loving. They had shown that Vixarians were not monsters. They were just another species trying to survive, waiting for someone to understand them. And Jack had given them that chance. As the group stood together watching the stars, Jack felt content. The galaxy was changing. Old prejudices were being questioned. New possibilities were opening up. The abandoned predator cubs that everyone feared had found more than just a caretaker. They had found an advocate, a friend, and a brother who refused to let fear control his choices. In the end, that made all the difference.